Many thanks for staying with us on TMI this Thursday. My name is Sonny Duke Okosun. Well, in the last couple of days, we'll be promoting that we'll be having a very distinguished personality in the show, TMI. We're talking about the senior pastor, Omega Fire Ministries, the man you know so well. He brought a spiritual language or maxim into ministry that most ministers have adopted, and it's actually working for them. When you hear people say fire, you know where it's coming from. I'm talking about Apostle Johnson Suleiman. Man of God, we're glad to have you on TMI this beautiful Thursday morning. How are you doing?
I'm blessed and highly favored. Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll just get straight to the point because time is of essence. You are a man of God. How did you come into ministry? Let's begin from there.
Things that are divine can't be humanly explained. You can only describe them. You can describe events surrounding them, but you can't put your finger on it to say this is when it actually started. But I know my childhood has been characterized with divine encounters. You know, so if you are going to say how it all started, I would say it actually from birth. And the Bible speaks about predestination. He said who he called, he predestined. So everyone who is genuinely called of God can only tell you the circumstances around the call. But where I heeded into the call of God is where I actually talk about, and that was my encounter with the late Archbishop Benson Dahusa. My life can't be described or defined without making kudos to a man of such brackets who actually impacted me in no small measure. So my stint, my encounter with the Archbishop was what actually made me discover the call of God upon my life. So if you ask me how did I come into ministry or how did I begin God's work, I would say it was when I met the late Archbishop Dahusa. Everything around my life that channeled towards ministry and the call of God actually took shape.
So in other words, you didn't come into ministry, you were called into ministry.
I was called into ministry. Ministry is not a profession, ministry is not an opinion, ministry is a calling. Ministry is one thing you don't have to, you can learn about it, but you learn on the job. You can go to a Bible school, but a Bible school doesn't teach you, a Bible school teaches you ideas, teaches you theory. But ministry is such a spiritual thing that you can only actually learn on the job as you continue. So it's a calling, it's not an opinion or a human idea.
So how has it been like since you heeded that call and you've been on it? How has it been like over the years?
God been faithful. I don't see troubles, I see challenges. When a child wants to learn how to run, the child falls. When the child wants to learn how to stand well, the child falls severally. So over the years, it's been full of challenges. But as soon as the challenge comes, there is a promotion that comes after it. So ministry has been challenging. Ministry has been awesome. God has been so faithful. I'm positive-minded, so I focus on testimonies. And it's been, if I'm to go by that, it's been awesome. God has been faithful.
Your ministry has been blossoming, spreading like a wildfire. Thinking that you are headquartered at Auchi in Edo State. I mean, Auchi of all places. Where did that come from?
That's what makes it a miracle. A miracle is what you cannot describe, but you see it happen. Naturally, I was actually in Lagos as a journalist, and God spoke to me to move to Auchi. Prior to that time, I have never been. I've never had a 1 month straight up stay in that town. So it wasn't a decision, it wasn't something I wanted to do. Actually, when God asked me, he said, go to Auchi, I asked him, is it Auchi or Bauchi? And God said, Auchi, and I said, if it's Auchi, then you're talking about my hometown. I'm not going to go there because before that time, you know, growing up in Benin, my mom had told us several stories about our town and the challenges they faced. So it's actually leading by God. You know, people actually moved to Lagos, but I moved from Lagos to Auchi. And from Auchi, it's been awesome. There is no dry ground, there are only dry men. Anywhere a king sits is a throne. A king is a king. There are kings in the villages, there are kings in the city, but the status of royalty is the same everywhere. So a king is a king. Where God sends you, that is where he sells you. If God sends you, from there he sells you. And what we are, one of the most dynamic, I would say exceptionally dynamic thing about our ministry is where we are headquartered. It amazes people that from there we are in over 40 countries, and we are in those countries effortlessly and blossomingly.
What is your motivation?
My motivation is is, I'll say two. One of them is vision. I live a life of vision. When you have no blueprint, you won't know where you have reached. Before I do anything, I have a blueprint. This is where I want to cover. So while the world is clapping for me, I say, no, that's not my idea of where I'm going. So when people are applauding, I say, no, this is not where I want to reach. That's one. And the second thing I know has propelled me is the Spirit of God. He has been the basis of why I keep moving on. There are things, high mountains and haywires I've seen that people wonder how I weather such storms. It's because the Spirit of God is the inner strength. He gives me courage. So I'll say vision and the Spirit of God. Life in itself, like I tell people, when you want to start a business, you don't need capital, you need vision. Because a man can get all the capital in the world. If he doesn't have vision, you blow them. So vision has been the basis for motivation, and the vision propelled by the Spirit of God.
Let's talk about the church, using Nigeria as a case study, and even globally. There seems to be so much persecution against the church in the world today. You're talking about militant activities, you're talking about terrorism and other forms of persecutions. Are these manifestations of the signs of the time, of the end time?
You just answered the question. These are signs of the end time. There are three things I would like to answer from three dimensions. The first dimension is anything good will be fought. Anything good will be fought. Anything good, what people do not understand, they call names. But what they understand, they destroy. The church is the sole light bearer. The church is the game changer. So you expect all kinds of persecution. Number two, many people in the church have actually made mistakes. Some have commercialized the gospel. Some have made merchandise of people. So that's why I'm answering it from three dimensions. Some people have actually gone into several errors. Several things have happened. And there's something about the black man, or man generally. One fails, all fails. When we see a man makes a mistake, we see everybody in that light. Some people have done funny things in the name of the gospel. People have met those who have made merchandise of the gospel. So they tend to think everybody's like that. There are people who actually do not go to church anymore because they've had funny experiences. But you cannot condemn all children because one is bad. Then the third, I'll handle it from this dimension, is the spirit of the last days. Satan knows that Jesus is coming soon, so he's doing everything to make sure the faith of men waver, the faith of men are shrinked, and he won't succeed. In as much as the church is being fought, the church is rising. The church is blossoming. The church is still standing firm. The devil cannot fight the church. The devil trying to fight the church is like good, is like evil rather, trying to triumph over good, and it's not possible.
Let's look at the Nigerian economy, which seems to be a major issue. Today you talk about corruption, you talk about mismanagement of resources, but the Western world, they are quick to tell us that, even though some of us already know that Nigeria is a blessed country. If Nigeria is such a blessed country, why is it that so many still live in penury, in poverty? Yes. If I'll talk about the economy, I'll say a few things.
We have no business being poor. Like I will table them again and answer them like two angles or three. Number one, Nigerians are not planners. Around the world, economic researchers tell us that oil prices fluctuate. It's a normal occurrence around the world. There are several nations that also see oil as their major source of income. And those nations never go into inflation because they have economic researchers and analysts who can actually foresee and tell you when the oil price will fluctuate. So they prepare ahead. But Nigeria will wait for that rainy day to catch up with us and start looking for alternatives. I blame certain people. I'm not going to mention names, but certain people who I feel didn't do their homework. When people who are supposed to be in charge of the economy are becoming political and leave their job, then issues will come up. And when you know there is so much abundance, so much wealth, and the people can actually see affluence in its full form, and yet there's nothing for them to eat, tempers are bound to flare. A wise man said, Nigeria is so blessed that you can literally pick gold from the street. But Nigerians are so heartless that they can't let it flow. I blame poor planning. I also blame greed. Greed. If you take first in class, you can't take second. You must take one. Yeah. Nigerians want to grab everything, want everything, want everything, want everything. We destroy what we have. You know, we destroy what we have. Recently, I was looking at the panels on those who are in charge of this, whatever they had in Abuja. And I said, I'm happy that they gathered them in one room, because these are the people that destroyed Nigeria. So let them gather them to repair what they destroyed. You know, it's a major problem we have in the country, because greed, everything that is done in Nigerian leadership, you know, is on the premise of greed. There's so much greed. If you are not greedy, you won't be corrupt. A man who is greedy sees his being in office as an opportunity to make every money. Corruption is the perversion of due process. So he has to cut corners. He has to make sure he steps on toes. He doesn't care whose ox is God. And leaders in Nigeria should understand, people have been leaders before you. People have come up before you. What stands the test of time is legacy. We had a man by the brackets of Bruce Ali, that till today people talk about him. People talk about Bruce Ali because of legacy. Legacy is important. Integrity is very expensive though, but it's a decision. You need to make up your mind. You can't have everything, and you cannot preach change until you are changed. I was flying from New York to Minnesota in America, and I was sitting down in the plane, and it was a period. There was a man in the American system who was running for Senate, and there was so much noise about him. People were upset because they felt the man was living an immoral, perverted life. He was homosexual. And they said a lot of things. So I sat with somebody in the plane, and I said, you guys are hypocrites. When countries like ours frown at things like this, you people get mad. So how come you're attacking a man who you feel is a homosexual? Meanwhile, you want governments to legalize homosexuality. And the man said something that struck me. He said, that's what we do. We don't expect a leader to do it. In other words, he said, if you want to lead us, don't be a victim of what we are victims of. So if you must lead people, you must be better than them. The average black man, the average man on earth is greedy. And you cannot ascend to leadership when you have the same virtues.
There are those who also blame the church, or say the church as part of this whole matrix of the challenges we're having. Some say, oh, well, the church today, all they think about is prosperity. People don't preach the message of salvation. How do you look at this school of thought that the church is also part of the problem?
I won't say the church is part of the problem. I would say individuals, the church is part of the problem, because the church, the word the church is the body of Christ.
Absolutely.
And the church cannot bring problem, they bring solution. Like I said, if you talk about the message of prosperity, the Bible says in 3 John, it says, which above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul. True prosperity begins with the soul, not materialism. There's a difference between materialism and prosperity. True prosperity starts with the soul. You cannot talk of your pocket being born again when your spirit is not born again. No man who is not saved has a future. If you must talk on prosperity, then it must be total, in the sense that you must be born again. That's the basis of prosperity. I like us to focus on those in the church who are truly preaching the message of salvation, and when we focus on that, we're going to be encouraged, because in as much as people say that the church ministers, some ministers have contributed to the pain, there are ministers today who have alleviated the sufferings of people. There are ministers who have gone into who have helped orphanage homes, who have gone into social works actually, and their community feel their impact because they feel they have to give back to society. So it's a two-way thing. Some people are making mess of it, and some other people see they have been in ministry as an opportunity to give life and give back to the society.
Let's just make some projections in the forthcoming polls. There's been so much hue and cry. People have expressed fears. Well, some say this is the year the American CIA talked about, that Nigeria will disintegrate as a fallout of the forthcoming polls. What are your thoughts? What do you see ahead in terms of that election?
Let me correct that. I had an interview with Al Jazeera, and I said America never gave a prediction that Nigeria will break up, because the American ambassador to Nigeria was speaking to the Oyo State governor, and he said what happened was they were talking about nations who they see possibility of military takeover, and they were making projections, and they said certain nations have to put their acts together, or else there might be interim government, or people might take over power. So they listed certain nations, and Nigeria was one of them. So no American at any time made a categorical statement that Nigeria will break up. I blame politicians. There's a level of leadership you get to, you watch your words, because they can be inflammatory.
Absolutely.
When you make an election a do or die, the shivers that are going down our spine today stem up from statements made by certain politicians. When people make statements that are so absurd, a leader should be one who counts the words. Every elections have come and gone. We've seen elections severally. But why this stands out is because of the way our leaders are going about it. They make it appear like somebody has to die, something has to happen. And I really advise most people in Nigeria, most of the men gunning for power, their children are not in this country. They're out of the country. And they buy weapons, they buy armories for people who actually are born by other men and women. So I would advise nobody should make themselves scapegoats. If I'm to talk from the human perspective, but the spiritual perspective, God hasn't shown me that Nigeria will break up. God hasn't shown me that there will be, definitely, we've had bloodshed even without election. It's a political thing. God hasn't shown me Nigeria will have the kind of heat on the polity that we see now. What God spoke to me about definitely is that it will come, it will go. But what happens after election? Election is not our problem. It's what happens after election. If there are going to be issues, it will be what happens after the election, not the election itself.
You're a member of CAN. What's your take on the leadership of CAN in terms of being an umbrella body of Christians in Nigeria and also projecting the ideals, the tenets of Christianity, and give a good representation to Christianity?
It's obvious. If you check it, you see that CAN is visible. When you want to know an organization that's working, you check the visibility. I think CAN is visible in the heat of all of these issues of insurgency. We've seen the visibility of CAN. At least they are talking. Like anything in Nigeria today, especially this electioneering period, if you are not careful, it will be politicized. You watch your words, you watch who you associate with. We live in a society now where you have to be friends with certain people. If you are not friends with certain people, people see, they try to politicize it. CAN has been visible. I think CAN is doing its best. CAN is trying. All they can do is to make recommendations. You know, it's left for the government to make implementations. Because if you can check all of this insurgency, I think it's the church that has been so much at a loss. Churches are burnt, people are losing their lives. They just threw a few attacks on the other religions so that they appear to make it balanced. But what I would say in one word, their presence has been visible. They can only make recommendations. It's left for the government to make implementations.
There are those who would criticize some Christian leaders or church leaders of amassing so much wealth. For example, they talked about the issue of private jets. I know you're also a very successful church leader, being the president and founder of Omega Families. Do you own a private jet? I wouldn't say I'm successful. I'm blessed. Success is only defined when you are gone. No man is successful while he's still alive. A man is said to be successful when he's gone. While you are still alive, you're climbing to be blessed. There are different views to certain things. You don't criticize people or speak against people until you are at the level they are in. This year, I've been to, last year, 2014, I had to minister the word of God in 33 nations. Sometimes I had to miss flights. Recently, I came from Benin. I came from Lagos by road. The flights were cancelled. Number two, criticisms abound. If you're poor, you'll be criticized. If you're rich, you'll be criticized. As far as I'm concerned, criticism is a personal opinion harshly expressed. It's your opinion, but your presentation of it comes in a harsh manner. That's what criticisms are. I will not condemn any man of God who gets a gift of a private jet. I will only be a little bit uncomfortable when a man buys from the church coffers a private jet. If a man is given the gift of a private jet and a firm is contracted by the same man who gives the gift to manage or maintain it, I don't think he has done wrong. Because if you condemn private jets, you can condemn cars. There are some people who shouldn't drive a car. So if people are flying and people are riding, I don't see any difference. The only difference is that one is up and one is down. As far as I'm concerned, that's my mindset over certain things. But I personally would not want us to look at it that way. There are ministers of God who their schedule is busy. Their schedule is hectic.
They have to fly from one nation to another. They have to fly from one state to another. They have to preach the gospel. Let's focus on their assignments, not necessarily their achievements.
Well, on the concluding part now, you are in Benin. What are you doing in Benin?
We've had a system running for the past 2 years. It's a yearly crusade that comes up every January in Benin at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium that has actually kicked off this morning. And we are in Benin to bless the land. We are in Benin to speak God's word over the land. And it's very strategic, an electioneering year, the first month of the year. So all the spiritual temperature, everything is working in the favor of Benin. It's the first crusade we are doing in Benin. Benin is my alma mater. I grew up in Benin. I started ministry in Benin. So it's obvious that we give back to Benin what the Lord has given to us in the form of spiritual progress and achievement. And we are in Benin to speak over lives, to speak over destinies, to tell the people that you're starting well by starting with God, to speak into bodies, to speak into health, to speak into destinies, to bring a general turnaround. And that's why we are in Benin at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium.
Who can attend this program?
Anybody. Anybody, anyone who believes God for a turnaround, anyone who believes God for a change of story, anyone who believes God for a new level. You know, circumstances are beating you hands down, and situations tend to tell you to surrender, and you want to come out of certain limitations and restrictions of life. You can attend. And even those who feel they don't have a bodily problem or a financial problem, you need to get focus, direction. We believe God to speak definitely and directly to people as they come.
How long is this program running?
4 meetings in 2 days. Morning, evening today, morning, evening tomorrow. 7, 8 in the morning, then 3:30 in the evening at the main bowl of the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium.
When you minister, at some point it's like you are beside yourself. What happens at that time? You want to share with us?
I'm as shocked as you are. I know you're talking about the prophetic. I was one of those who never liked the prophetic ministry, because I saw it as embarrassing. It's too personal, and I'm naturally a very shy person. What happened was someday we were expecting a great man of God to come for a meeting, and the man of God didn't show up, and I was told to mount the rostrum. So as I mounted the rostrum, I just saw myself saying things I was hearing audibly, like I'm hearing from you now, as I hear from God audibly. And at that point, I cannot explain what happens. Till date, I'm trying. I've been interviewed severally, and I'm trying to give to put in words how I feel or how it happens. I don't know, but it just happens. It's not planned for. It's not what I prepare for. I just say, I get on the pulpit, and it takes over, and it just happens. So that's how it happens.
You recounted your encounter with the Archbishop many years ago. That, you said, defined your personality as a minister. Would you recall that encounter? And how would you describe the Archbishop based on your personal encounter and the impact he made on you?
In my own opinion, there is no man of God, dead or alive, who has affected African soil with the gospel of Jesus like the late Archbishop Benson Dahusa. Not man. I've traveled to 90 nations. I've seen all kinds of people. The Archbishop preached to more whites than any black man, and he preached to more blacks than any white man. He went to the 6 continents of the earth, and yet maintained his base in a city like Benin. Saw everything. And my meeting the Archbishop was actually in '92. Somehow God made it happen. He had a crusade, and I gave my life to Christ. And I saw a role model. I saw in him a man I desired to be like, a man whose God I wanted to know. God actually planted in my heart the love for the Archbishop. What people were seeing was not what I was seeing. You know, I saw a man. Elisha never submitted to a perfect mentor, but he submitted to a perfect mantle. I wanted the mantle, and I had to love the mentor. The Archbishop is boldness. If the Archbishop were around, many things happening in this country wouldn't happen, because of his boldness, his fearlessness. He is not political, and he wasn't political rather, and his life and times were characterized by bold utterances, bold steps, bold declarations. He's a man who's, in one word, the sum total of the Archbishop, a man who was fearless. And I think that's one virtue I drew from him, and has helped me in ministry and life generally.
You had instances where some politicians have come to seek your assistance or help or direction. What do you say to them when they come? Do they come?
They come, they come. I'm a spiritual father to over 21 presidents, African presidents, who I call by first names. First of all, if someone, it doesn't matter, politicians are just normal human beings who are in politics. I don't attach any premium to them. I don't attach any premium. If you're a politician and you come, doesn't matter who you are, and you meet people on the queue, you have to stay on the queue. We don't give preference to anybody. Being a politician who occupies maybe a house in the state or the federal government, as far as I'm concerned, that's your pick. But the poor man on the street, we have not seen his pick yet. So we need to give, we don't need to give preference to people. They come. But I discovered one thing about politicians. Number one, they want to hear what they want to hear. So you cannot be their friend when you are telling them what God is saying. Every politician does. Politicians actually do not come to people for direction. They come for endorsement. They don't come to tell you, should I do this? Only few come to ask you, what is God saying? Now, the second thing about most of them is that when they get into power, they become inaccessible. They become, they do what they want to do. They get intoxicated with power. And these same people who solicited the help of ministers of God become to, in quote and out of quote, bigger, larger than life. So they come, but I've made my stand. Someone came the other time and said he wants to run for a certain office. And I said to him, spend your money on something else, you won't win. And he went ahead, met another minister who told him, oh, you will win. Go ahead. And he lost woefully. Because first of all, if a politician wants to meet a man of God, you must be ready for what God wants to say, not what you want to hear.
Well, before we let you go, how do you see your ministry in the next 1 year? And what are your thoughts about Nigeria, this year?
We believe in God. We have goals. We have goals. And we believe in God for a more spread and to consolidate what we already have on ground. That's our major goal, to see how we can consolidate what we already have and generally become a brand by the grace of God. For the country, I think God has a plan for Nigeria. Most of the things happening now, Nigeria is the giant of Africa. Nigeria is the most populous nation in Africa. So you expect a lot of things to happen. America is interested in Nigeria because of numbers. When you're running business, numbers matters. America is interested in Nigeria. African nations are interested. So many diverse interests in Nigeria. I believe God that just the way different nations are interested in Nigeria, God also is interested in Nigeria. And God's interest will swallow up any human interest. And Nigeria, like I said, will not break up. We'll see the light of the day. We have spoken words over this country, and we believe that in no shorter time, those words will put on flesh and manifest.
Just look at this camera and talk to the people, especially against the background that your program starts today. When you leave the studio, I'm sure you're going to the venue of your meeting today. Life
is in phases. If you've been having challenges of life, it's one phase. If you've been sick, it's one phase. If you've been stranded or you've been possessed with a demon, or you don't have a baby, or you believe in God for something to happen in your life, it's one phase. There is another phase of life, and that is what we are ushering everyone watching me now into. This morning and this evening, tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening, God will be ushering people into another phase of life. Anything missing is not gone. It can be found. Anything missing can be recovered. It's a restoration season as you join me at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium, the main bowl, this morning and this evening. The same thing tomorrow for 2 days of outstanding move of God, total freedom. I'm expecting to see you there.
All right, you heard from the horse's mouth. You be there and, of course, have a great turnaround. I want to thank you, sir, Apostle Professor Johnson Suleiman, for your patience and for your time. You're a very, very busy person. And I know that it's not every invitation like this you have the time to honor. And there's so much to say, but maybe we'll leave that for another day. I want to thank you again for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Well, TMI Thursday morning. We'll take a short break and we'll be back with you with the rest of the show. Don't go away.